heard the tires skidding on the runway. He'd arrived. In Chicago, everybody comes off the plane. They're all sort of dressed in black, severe. They come out. Like the people from the Matrix or something, they're all dressed with these sort of turtlenecky kind of black things on. So they come out, wind-tossed hair, even though they haven't even gotten off the airplane yet. Pretty soon I'm wondering, oh no, maybe he missed his flight. He's not very good with numbers. He's not very good with schedule. He's not very well funk out in that regard. And he has a little ways to travel from Topeka to Kansas City to get on the airplane. Starting to wish I had a cell phone. I didn't have any way to call Mom to make sure he got on all right. Whew. Finally, I see him. Dad comes walking off the airplane. Everyone else in black. Dad walks off the airplane. He would have looked probably more true to nature if he had his overalls on, but he actually just kind of had a T-shirt on and looked kind of like a little bit of a country bumpkin. Part of me was a little bit embarrassed. He's getting up there. He wasn't a young kid anymore. You had a hero worship on him all the time growing up. I got to describe him a little bit. He's about my height, maybe even a little taller, and he was what they call a master swimmer. In Kansas, he had the old man record for the fastest swimmer. He's a great swimmer, and his arms were huge. I mean, they're like this big around, and his chest was just. So he walks off. He looks like he's been working on farms his whole life. But he's actually a psychiatric social worker. He works at the VA hospital with crazy people. He'll call me up once in a while and tell me a story about some guy calls him on. He calls my dad at home and says, "I'm here at the asylum." My dad says, "Oh, okay. Calm down. Take it easy." "No, I'm going to kill myself for sure this time." "All right. Okay. Take it easy. Don't do that. You don't want to hurt yourself." "No, this is it." The guy on the other line puts the phone down and my dad hears his feet. What the people often don't realize at the VA is that the windows are made of plexiglass. He bounces right back. My dad listens for a little while. Finally, the orderly comes up and says, "Mr. Millen?" "Yeah." "He's all right." "Okay. All right, talk to you later." That's it. So my dad looks like a farmer. He's really a psychiatric social worker. He comes off the airplane, a sweet guy, just as nice as can be. Like I say, there's this time, this sort of switch where now I'm starting to become the dad, the man or whatever, and my dad's kind of someone I'm starting to worry about, am I going to have to take care of him or whatever? It's just sort of on my mind as he walks off, a little bit frumpy, a little bit worn out. Can't find his luggage. Everybody has the new luggage, the fancy kind of, 3 matching pieces or whatever. And my dad's is this old Samsonite thing that's like the hard one that made of like eggshell, You can hit it and, you have to stomp on that little lock. He's lost the key 30 years ago, so anybody could pilfer through his stuff, but doesn't have anything worth stealing anyway, so it's okay. So he gets off the plane. I'm just glad to see him. I give him a hug, say, "How you doing, Dad? I'm really glad you could come." This is the only time my dad ever came to visit me anywhere. For sure, he came to Chicago. It was pretty exciting, but also a little disconcerting because I lived in kind of a rough neighborhood at that time. But I think he felt right at home because there were a lot of halfway houses and insane asylums and things of that nature, A lot of kind of druggies out on the corners selling this and that. One kid that walks around with a golf club and spins it and threatens everyone that comes near him. All right. My dad was with me. There's something about having him there with that big chest, those big arms. All 3 of us kids would hang on his arm and he'd arm wrestle us while I watched TV. Changing he called it the blipper. He didn't even call it the remote control. He's like, "Give me the blipper, kid." And he'd change the channel. We'd all hang on his arm. He was strong. So walking down the street with him, I felt at peace and I felt safe in Chicago for like one of the first times ever that I can think of. Just a very few adventures that we had that I thought I'd tell you about. One of them was walking through the park with my dad. Took him out to a park a few blocks away, and he gave me some advice that I'll never forget. I was struggling in my marriage a little bit. We were at kind of, I think, close to the 7-year itch. My wife was in plays all the time, and she was always in plays with these pretty good-looking guys, Thankfully, as I was telling some of the ladies, most of them were gay, so I didn't have to worry about her getting too seriously involved with these guys. But nevertheless, she's up on stage oftentimes making out with these guys or something. Shakespeare, they're always kissing in Shakespeare, right? So anyway, she's in these plays, and I'm talking with Dad. I'm like, Dad, I'm struggling a little bit in the marriage, a little bit here and there. My wife's kind of getting on my nerves. Sometimes at night, she, instead of coming home, she wants to go out to the bar and hang out with all these guys from the play and all her chums. She's with them 12 hours a day in the show, and then she wants to go and hang out with them 3 or 4 hours at night. Sometimes she leaves me with a kid, when we had our new baby. So I was struggling to tell my dad about that, and my dad just, in his perfect psychiatric social working kind of way, is walking next to me, and I think in his eye I saw my mom, who was the exact same way. And he was walking through the park, and he's like, this was his advice, and I'll never forget. He said, "Oh, boy, let the girls have their fun." Yeah. Let the girls have their fun. Okay. Never since then, I've let my wife have her fun. I don't worry so much about it. That was it. Simple advice. That's all I needed, My dad didn't talk a lot. He didn't tell a lot of stories about when he was a kid. So it's kind of nice when he actually gave me a little life advice. And the other thing I noticed about my dad, when we were walking back, we had to get a little dinner. We were starting to get hungry. We were walking back, and I remember, he's a Kansas boy. He loves catfish fishing. He loves to go hunting for pheasant and quail, which are kind of puny little critters. Everybody out here hunts for deer or whatever, and my dad shoots pheasant and quail. I hit one quail, and I cried for an hour or so. And, my dad said, "Just step its head off, boy, so it doesn't suffer." And he pulls his body right off the head. It's just part of what he grew up with. That I guess I was too tender-hearted. I remember him kind of looking at me when he took a few of my tater tots, and I started crying. I think I was like 7 or something. I just remember him looking at me just going, "Oh, boy." I just remember that. So we were going to go get our dinner. Well, I was getting kind of hungry, but I did notice this countryside of him kind of coming out in the middle of Chicago. 2 things. He's walking down the street, and very different from anyone in Chicago. A little guy, African-American guy, is walking down the street. It's pretty late. My dad, is walking down the street. This little African-American guy comes walking nearby. My dad says, "Howdy." That is honestly the reaction I saw. This guy did a dance that I've never seen before. Someone said howdy to him in the middle of Chicago. You don't do that, okay? I sort of took my dad, to the side. "Dad, Chicago people don't say hello very much, It sort of makes him feel nervous." Where I said, "Oh, okay, boy, I'll work on that." Didn't stop. Downtown Chicago, everywhere we went, my dad was, "Howdy." People didn't know what to think of that. Okay? The other thing he noticed, very peculiar, my dad, country boyish kind of man in Chicago there. He stopped one time and looked at the side of a car right by the door. And then he went to the next car and looked right by the door. He went to the next car, all down the street. He was looking at the sides of the cars, looking at the door. That's odd. "What do you see, Dad?" "Well, it looks like the birds sit here by the window and look in the mirror and poop all down the side of the car. I wonder why they do that. It's very weird." "Yeah, that's weird, Dad." But I noticed it. Every single car all down the Chicago street, it's like a pigeon had sat right there, looked at himself in the mirror, and squirted all down the side of the car. How does he notice things like this? I don't know. I couldn't figure it out. So we kept walking. I took him home for my special, most favorite treat of all, a big bowl of macaroni and cheese, Kraft, of course, bacon bits crumbled on top. And I took him to the Chicken Hut, which is a Chicago wonder. I mean, you go in and there's a piece of plexiglass this thick, and you can't hear the guy in there at all. You're like, "I want a basket of wings and some mushrooms." "What?" "I'd like some mushrooms, a basket of..." "I can't hear you." "All right, just give me some mushrooms." Okay, finally you get your order. It comes through a giant plexiglass window in like a metallic kind of tray, just like it was a major bank. And you get your little pile of mushrooms with the hot wing sauce and the the ranch sauce, and my dad loved it. We were both sitting on the carpet. My dad, that's good, boy. That's good. I like the Chicago food. We went downtown to look at the Art Institute Museum. It must have been rush hour, you know. Just the train was totally crowded. Hundreds of people on the train, all hanging on the things and rocking and banging up against each other. Just people everywhere. My dad just eyeballs them all. You know, he's never seen so many people dressed in black, so many strange and oddities, you know, people of all different types and races and colors. He'd never seen anything like that. You know, and he'd just stare at them a little bit. I say, Dad, oh, sorry, son. You know, he'd stare at another. But, heaven forbid a cute girl walks on the train. We're there on the train, and I noticed that Dad, you know, even though he's got this countryside to him, you know, he was a psychiatric social worker. Worked at the VA, one of the toughest places with some of the toughest cases in the world. Okay, he'd seen it all. And there was a fellow that came on the train. Okay, he's one of the Chicago oddities. He's a guy that, you know, there's several of them. There's the cat woman that sits on the corner and says, "Hi, can you help me feed my cats? Hi, can you help me feed my cats?" And she always has a cat. And her voice is so piercing that 5 blocks away, it's like someone sticks a little thing in the back of your neck. It's so piercing, her voice, okay? And then there's this one fellow, just talks to himself, just general crazy scariness. Some of the things he says, you know, you start going a little paranoid and crazy yourself. You actually kind of believe some of the things he says. There's a worldwide conspiracy. They're all following us through this night. They're coming down the alien forces. They've abducted my mind. Emblazoned on your forehead. And he'd wander around mumbling these kinds of things. Quite terrifying, talking to himself. You know, and I did what everyone in Chicago does. This is what I did. This guy walking around speaking in tongues, whatever he's doing at the moment. And I'm ignoring him. Okay? Dad looks at the guy. Observes him. For a long time, my dad did something that I've never seen anyone in Chicago do. My dad looked at the man, and he leaned forward. He said, "Hey, are you okay? Are you okay?" And the man immediately stopped. He looked at my dad as if like something had snapped in his mind where he was aware and he was awake and he wasn't paranoid schizophrenic anymore. Just with those simple healing words, "Are you okay?" And he looked at my dad and he was quiet. The next stop, he walked off the train, almost as if he was normal. It made me think that sometimes I shouldn't be like that, you know, in Chicago. But maybe I should be more like a guardian angel or a healer like my dad. And be willing to say, "Howdy," and see people freak out. Or to say once in a while to somebody, "Hey, are you okay?" And I do remember it was on that same street where all the birds had pooped down the sides of the car. Okay? The same street with the fence over here, and I could see the cars, you know, lined up, the dirty street, the walk-ups on the side here. I remember looking at that bird poop. I'd just gotten a call that my dad had died. And for some stupid reason, I went into work that night anyway, trying to teach, and my mind was somewhere else, thinking I need to help Mom, I need to be there. And I do remember walking to work and seeing that bird poop and thinking about my dad and looking in that mirror and seeing my face looking a little more like his every day, you know? But wanting to just say to myself, "Are you okay?"